Good morning. Today we are breaking down two big moves from President Trump's administration and a controversy. First up, we've got President Trump sending the National Guard into Memphis. Then we'll get into the back and forth over flags flying at half-staff after the shootings of Minnesota lawmakers. And finally, we'll talk about Trump redirecting nearly $500 million to historically Black colleges and universities. Let's get started. Welcome to Nellie Miranda. President Trump has ordered the National Guard into Memphis. He is calling it a replica of his Washington, D.C. crackdown on crime. The Guard will not be going in there alone. The plan involves the FBI, ICE, the Marshal Services, and other federal agencies. And Trump has already said Chicago might be next.
Memphis, Tennessee, right here. That is where a federal task force will soon be formed and work to reduce crime in the city. President Trump now saying this operation will really reflect and look similar to the federal surge we just saw deployed in Washington, D.C. Now, that included thousands of National Guard troops as well as other federal support and agencies from the FBI, DEA, and ICE. The president adding this will help get career criminals off of the streets.
In 2024, Memphis had the highest violent crime rate, the highest property crime rate, and the third highest murder rate of any city in the nation.
Now, critics are furious. Memphis's mayor, Paul Young, a Democrat, says he didn't request federal help. Other lawmakers in the state are warning of federal overreach, of militarized policing, and of a dangerous precedent. Watch.
I think that the National Guard here in Memphis will hurt this community, but also our country. I think it will compromise many of our rights. We'll have folks without training interacting with our citizenry, and there's a chance that that will compromise our due process rights. We don't want to see checkpoints, armored vehicles, individuals with semi-automatic weapons patrolling our streets, military personnel in fatigues. I think it's really anti-American. I think it defies our traditions and may possibly be illegal.
Some point out that crime numbers in Memphis are actually down in a few categories this year, and what they actually need are more resources. Take a listen.
Local leaders fighting back here arguing the best way to reduce crime in Memphis is by addressing crippling economic conditions.
We need more funding for housing. We need more funding for education in our schools. We need more funding for infrastructure, food programs. Those are the things that will actually address the long-term solutions to make Memphis safer.
Law and order is non-negotiable. When cities spiral into violence, federal help can be justified, with clarity, of course. Now, from boots on the ground in Memphis to a flag controversy in Minnesota, this summer, tragedy struck Minnesota. State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband were assassinated, and soon after, State Senator John Hoffman and his wife were critically injured by the same shooter. Governor Tim Walz ordered flags at state buildings flown at half-staff, but at the national level, the White House never followed. President Trump later said that he would have lowered flags nationwide if Walz had requested. Take a listen.
Mr. President, I want Charlie Kirk, in retrospect, given all of the moving ways that this White House has paid tribute to Charlie Kirk, right, do you think it would have been fitting to lower the flags to half-staff when Melissa Hortman, the Minnesota House Speaker, was gunned down by an assassin as well?
I'm not familiar.
The Minnesota House Speaker, a Democrat, who was assassinated this summer.
Well, if the governor had asked me to do that, I would have done that. But the governor of Minnesota didn't ask me. I wouldn't have thought of that, but I would have if somebody had asked me. People make requests for the lowering of flag, and oftentimes you have to say no because it would be a lot of lowering. The flag would never be up. Had the governor of Minnesota asked me to do that, I would have done that gladly.
And given the killing of Melissa Hortman, the attack on Paul Pelosi, the attack on Gabby Giffords, the attack on the Pennsylvania governor's mansion, why make the case that violence is only on one side? It seems to be taking place.
I didn't say it's on one side, but I say the radical left causes tremendous violence, and they seem to do it in a bigger way. But the radical left really is caused a lot of problems for this country. I really think they hate our country.
The right thing would have been to order the flags flown at half-staff for the Hortmans. But it wouldn't have hurt for Waltz to call as a reminder. And no, I am not making excuses for President Trump, but sometimes we have to make uncomfortable calls. Critics pounced. They said that this was heartless. Presidents before him have often lowered flags without being asked. And it's about showing unity, they argued. It's about honoring the fallen regardless of party. The big takeaway is we have to be careful that symbolism doesn't look partisan. If Republicans only honor conservative figures and Democrats only honor their own, then the flag loses its meaning as a unifying symbol. But moving on to our next story, let's talk about a nearly $500 million move in higher education. President Trump is redirecting almost $500 million towards historically Black colleges and universities and tribal colleges. The increase is huge. That is nearly 50% more for HBCUs and more than double for tribal schools compared to what was already budgeted.
Donald Trump signed an executive order this week to help grow historically Black colleges and universities. He plans to team up with nonprofits and government agencies to grow America's workforce in technology, healthcare, and manufacturing. The president says the executive order will promote student success by making degrees at HBCUs more affordable. He plans to partner with the Department of Agriculture and state governments to address barriers to schools' access to federal funding. Joseph Dixon is a student at Langston University. It's Oklahoma's only HBCU. He says this has been long overdue.
HBCUs will tell you that they're missing is the proper funding. And so the fact that we now get that, you're going to see a transformation of so many different schools.
But here's the catch. The money is being shifted from grants to Hispanic-serving institutions and other minority-serving schools, and that is where the controversy begins. The administration defends the move. They say it is about focusing resources where they will have the greatest impact on institutions that have historically been underfunded but are central to Black and Native communities. Education Secretary Linda McMahon even argued that some existing grant programs were racially discriminatory or ineffective, and that this is a better use of taxpayer dollars. The press release from the Department of Education reads, and this is from September 10th. It says, today the U.S. Department of Education announced that it will end discretionary funding to several minority-serving institutions, grant programs that discriminate by conferring government benefits exclusively to institutions that meet racial or ethnic quotas. This action follows the U.S. Solicitor General determination in July that the Hispanic-serving institutions programs violate the equal protection component of the Fifth Amendment's due process clause, and that the Department of Justice would not defend them in ongoing litigation. It also goes on to say, discrimination based upon race or ethnicity has no place in the United States. To further our commitment to ending discrimination in all forms across federally supported programs, the department will no longer award minority-serving institution grants that discriminate by restricting eligibility to institutions that meet government-mandated racial quotas, said U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon. I think supporting HBCUs is a good thing. These schools often outperform expectations despite having fewer resources. And strengthening them is smart policy, and I better not hear one Black person complain, because I know we are the type to be like, but that's the least he can do. But ignore the fact that Biden never did, and neither did our beloved Obama. So my questions for you are, do you think deploying the National Guard to Memphis is the right move or federal overreach? And do you support redirecting nearly $500 million to HBCUs and tribal colleges, even if it means cuts to Hispanic-serving institutions? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, if honest commentary brings you value, please make sure you like and subscribe, as it helps support the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.